Okay, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kyle King. We are just going to give it a couple minutes here to let some extra people come into the room. But you're not too early, don't worry. And yeah, greetings to everybody. Morning, afternoon, wherever you're from. If you would just go ahead and drop in the chat, let me know where you're from. Our last webinar, we had over 23 different nations that were represented, so it'd be great to know where you're from. And we will go ahead and get started. So this is the International Models in Emergency Management Seminar. This is where we are doing this in partnership with Capacity Building International. That's me. My name is Kyle King. I'm the Managing Director of Capacity Building International, and joined by Harold Drager from the International Emergency Management Society. So Harold, good to see you again. We are basically structuring this 2021 webinar series to cover just all the different international models that are out there that are being used. And we're doing this for a number of different reasons, and I'll get into this in just a second. Today's seminar, or today's webinar, is going to be on the certification offered by TIEMS. And so Harold will go into that in much more detail. What I wanted to first do is just do an overview and the typical kind of admin issues that we follow with the webinar series. So first of all, as an introduction, my name is Kyle King. I'm the Managing Director of Capacity Building International, as I had mentioned. My background, I came out of the U.S. Department of Defense Fire and Emergency Services, but I've been working internationally for over 20 years for various international organizations in the field of, well, crisis management, civil emergency planning, and others. And we're joined here by Harold as well. And this is Harold's background, as you could see. And of course, Harold, you could elaborate into that a bit more once we start with your presentation. But I just wanted to cover really the administrative portion of the webinar itself. And one of the things that, as a really quick points, if you have any questions or you have anything that you want us to answer, really just let us know in the Q&A section, and use the chat here for just kind of the short messages, like letting us know where you're from. A lot of people here throughout the United States, from Washington, Carolina, California, Italy, great, Belgium, Albania, Germany, fantastic, South Africa, great. Lots of people coming from around the world, and that's really great to know. So if you have any Q&A, just drop those in the Q&A section and we'll get to those. And we have Victoria with us here today, who's also on the panel, and she'll be taking those questions as well. And India, fantastic. Canada, wow, wonderful. So the 2021 series, we really wanted to build out this series because we wanted to really have a larger conversation about what's happening globally and how people are actually dealing with, disaster response, other issues surrounding that, from, prevention and mitigation, and everything else, response and recovery options. And as we started building this out, we first had our kickoff seminar in February, and now we're getting into the TIEMS and the certification, the TQC. And next, this has actually grown rapidly. We were kind of quite surprised by this, but it's grown rapidly. And you can see here kind of the series that we've got planned for the next few months up until the mid of 2021. Next webinar we're going to have is starting with NATO crisis management. And that's going to be from the Crisis Management Disaster Response COE, based out of Sofia, Bulgaria. But then we're going to have representation from many different nations, including France, China, Czech Republic, and many others. And what we're also starting to see is that many people are interested in the topic, of course, of the pandemic and COVID. So we've got a couple of presentations that'll be coming up over for this one specifically in June, will be applied data science and the use of COVID for operational models and response. So there's lots of interesting presentations that are coming up, and we're very much looking forward to having these as part of the webinar series. If you're interested in like going to very specific topics like this, such as data science or pandemic response, let us know, because we can also do a more specific webinar series on those subjects if you're interested. But that's kind of an overview of the series. And one of the challenges that we had, and I wanted to talk about this for just a second, is one of the challenges we had is that how could we plan for these webinars without a registration page and not really knowing the dates? Because you can imagine it's quite challenging. Everybody's quite busy these days. And so we needed to capture a way to collect everybody into a group so that we could give you the information that, when events are coming up or when they've changed and when it's time to register. So what we did was built this LinkedIn events page. And if you can go to LinkedIn, and you'll find it there under Capacity Building International. And it's a year-long event. And basically, once you sign up to attend this event, that's where we're going to put all the information, recordings. We're going to put the registrations and all the changes that are coming up with this 2021 series will be in the LinkedIn event page itself. They also, in the event page, you have the ability to ask questions or talk to us directly. We check that page every day, and we look at that and post updates as it goes along. So by attending this event, you're not actually registering for the webinar series, but you're staying aware of what's happening so that when you do want to attend a webinar that we have, you'll be able to find the registration quite easy. Now, the whole idea behind this in the 2021 webinar series is just to have a conversation. This is not really to be just a one-way presentation talking to you about all these different issues. We want to have a conversation with you as coming out of this community, out of the emergency management community, so that we can have a better understanding of the issues you're dealing with and how you deal with them. And sharing this information is going to be a great way for all of us to learn from each other's experiences. So it's really also about what do you want to know? And this is where we're leveraging both of our networks, both with TIEMS and also CBI, to where, what do you want to know? What kind of focus would you like to have and specialty, or what structures do you want to know about? There were lots of questions about mitigation in one of the previous webinars, and those are other subjects that we can bring up. So what are we actually going to expect here? So again, it was planned to be a monthly webinar series, but we've had so many speakers come forward that we are actually going to do this about every 2 weeks, in the middle of the month and the end of the month. The invitations will be sent in advance. We're also going to post it into that LinkedIn event group. And the presentations are typically going to last about 30 minutes. And then we'll be having a panelist and kind of Q&A session. And again, if there's enough interest in these kind of very specific topics like COVID, pandemic response, data science, and other aspects, then we will do a deep dive series, and we'll look a little bit more into those as well. So that's what you can expect from this series overall. Now, what models are we actually looking at? Our original idea was to kind of start with Europe and work ourselves outwards, but we've just gotten a lot of response so far that we actually are taking on just a lot more speakers and models, because the interest has been really fantastic. As far as time zones, this is one of the biggest challenges we have, at least logistically. So of course, everything is recorded. This webinar is recorded, and you'll get a copy of that in an email 24 hours after the event is over, automatically by Zoom. And we also put this in the LinkedIn event page. But since we have a global audience, this is kind of centralized in the evening time in Europe. And then so that way it's in the morning or early afternoon in the United States, and then also later in the evening. Unfortunately, we just can't get to all time zones, but we try to do best as we can. If you can't attend the event live, then certainly just register and you'll get a recording anyway. Again, if you're interested in supporting the series, if you are working for your National Disaster Management Authority, or if you're very close to that, then you want to support the series and present your model, then basically just let us know. Help to build a community, share and engage, ask questions, and also be open to new ideas and discussion about how people are handling the challenges that we all face. And again, you can also do that through the event page itself in LinkedIn. So with that, I'll just look for any real quick questions and see. I don't see any questions yet. I know that if you're raising your hand, go ahead and just type in a question in the Q&A section, and then we'll try and get those from there and go in that direction. So at this point, what I'll do now is, Harold, I'll turn it over to you and for the presentation on the TQC.
Thank you, Kyle. I will share my presentation and then good.
Yep, looks good.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. What I will address you today on is a brief introduction into TIEMS International Certification, which we call TQC, and that stands for TIEMS Qualification Certification in International Emergency and Disaster Management, or we call it only TQC. It's a link here. You will have this presentation in the things that send you after this, as Kyle said, so you don't have to take any notes. Before I go into the details, I would like to tell you a little bit why do we do this. And our motivation in TIEMS have been that with an increasing number of disasters worldwide, resulting in more international collaboration and support to the disaster-stricken areas, we think it's evident that it's possible to have a common understanding of what is emergency management. And this is then trying to adding to this that people can certify in what we call an international or global common understanding of emergency management. So, but I've also given you here a little bit about the development process, because this hasn't been an overnight thing. It started already back in 2006 during TIEMS annual conference in Korea. And over time, we have had about 300 experts from more than 40 countries we have consulted, and they have participated by answering questionnaire. Some of them have been in our workshops in Kyiv, Manila, and Seoul, and by this have we discussed and concluded the TQC concept. But in order to make this a live system, we needed to have some test candidates which would test the system, seeing to it that this system was relevant and give us good feedback. And these 7 candidates, they are from 6 countries: Australia, China, Jordan, Nigeria, South Africa, and USA. And this idea was then to tune this TQC into the needs of the international emergency management and disaster response community. So what is, for whom is this? What we say, this TQC certification is for individual emergency management with a nationally recognized professional certification, or other individuals with documented competence and experience, practical or academic, in international emergency and disaster management. And TQC only certifies knowledge and competences about international standards, requirements, and best practice necessary to create what I said in the beginning, an international common understanding among those working with emergency and disaster management internationally. And we believe by offering this that we can promote a global competence in emergency management, share best practices, and support international collaboration, and that this over time will lead to an international common language, knowledge, and understanding of emergency and disaster management. Here is a simple picture of the process. When an applicant wants to go through the certification process, he or she starts with the application, then go to compliance, then examination, and if gone through positively through the examination, he gets awarded the certificate shown here to the right. And we think that TQC can act as a facilitator element in the cooperation efforts between countries and organizations, using a common language and a common knowledge and understanding of international emergency management and disaster response. There are some prerequisites. I will go a little bit in detail, but not too much. We focus on education, participation, contribution, and competence. There are education requirements, and these are listed here. 1 or more of the following: bachelor's degree in science, engineering, social science, or emergency and disaster management, or minimum 50 hours of emergency disaster management training in the last 5 years, and or a certification related to emergency and disaster management at the national level. Participation, meaning we want candidates that have been living through emergency management, and the candidate is required to have at least 3 years experience as a first responder, volunteer, educator, leader, or other activity, practical or academic, directly involved with emergency and disaster management in the last 6 years. Again, contribution. Again, we say one or more of the following: at least 5 publications or speaking engagement, participation as a leader or board member of organization dealing with emergency management, or teaching emergency management. Competence. One thing we like to focus on is that the candidate is required to show having competence, experience, or education in 7 areas of emergency and disaster management. Here is international perspectives, preparedness, prevention and mitigation, prediction and early warning, emergency operations, public warning, search and rescue, and recovery and reconstruction. And all this have to be followed by the candidate. You have to adhere to TQC Code of Conduct. I will come back to that later. So when the candidates start with the application, he log into the website, and here is showing the top of the form the candidate has to fill in. First of all, he has to read the brief introduction, mostly the one I present for you today, so he knows and can check, am I experienced enough to do this? Also, TQC Code of Conduct, and other questions, and he has to be a member of TIEMS. He have to have a paid membership. Other things you have to fill in: demographic and contact information, education background, nature of present work, specialization, experience in emergency management during the past 20 years, emergency management interest, English language capability. All what we do at this time is in English language, and his or her motivation for certification. You can click on this and come to the full form, but it was too large to put it in the screen. So how do we evaluate the candidate? And this process is done by, we have established 3 TQC boards. The overall board is the TQC certification board, which first of all evaluate the candidate when he sends in the application form. If he is found that he is competence and experience to be certified, he or she will be asked to load up background documentation, and this documentation will be evaluated by TQC Compliance Board to find if he is compliant, and then send it over to the TQC Examination Board, who together with the candidate sets up the examination. And passing the examination, he will be approved as certified and get his or her diploma. Here's a list of different things that have to document the background and experience. As you can see, basic, a curriculum vitae with the top points: address, work experience, education, etc. Copies of degrees, diplomas, program certificates, and course completions. Copies of certification related to emergency and disaster management. Evidence of publication, presentation, teaching, or leadership. And 1 professional reference describing the candidate's participation in emergency and disaster management activity, or an additional background and experience documentation. And again, back to what we call the 7 competence area, the candidate have to show that he has experience or can document that he has knowledge about these 7 competence areas. Everything goes on a computer platform. And here is shown a picture to the right of the platform where the candidate is putting in his application and where the different boards can access this information and evaluate the candidate and do the examination with him. And at the bottom, you see the different type of information and courses available on the platform. We have put up what we call a procedure framework. So we have public documents, this brief introduction. There is a reference to a more closer description, more details about what I tell you about today. A special TQC newsletter. I think you received that yesterday. I sent it out yesterday. Code of conduct and the application form. And when the candidate is accepted and logged into the platform, he gets a certification guide, he gets an examination guide, he gets access to the examination questions, and proctor-free user guide. We have namely made it possible that the candidate can take the examination wherever they are, and we do this by proctoring, by monitoring him. I will come back to that a little bit later. We have also established what we call TIEMS Academy, and the overall goal is that TIEMS Academy shall be an online portal that will make emergency management educational resources from TIEMS and reputable educational institutions and initiatives broadly available worldwide. TIEMS will not provide information alone. We are cooperating with other universities, and the candidate can actually go wherever he wants to find the background, experience, and documentation for learning in this case. Today, the Academy contains educational material in forms of programs and proceedings from TIEMS international events, all the way from '94 to the last one this year, last year. We have developed our own courses, and we will also provide courses by the TIEMS International Education Network and provide links to relevant international teaching material for the deepening of learning for the candidate. And as all of you who are working with emergency and disaster management, you know, this is a huge field, and we encourage candidates to gain an exposure to many aspects that comprise in this field. And during the compliance process, the candidate has to demonstrate experience or knowledge in these 7 competence areas. But coming to examination, we had to select how do we test a field that is so vast and so large. And then we decided to pick out 4 specific areas where the candidate will be examined after he has been evaluated and passed the compliance phase, namely international perspectives, 2, the Sendai framework, the ISO standards, and the Interag framework. We expect over time that we will have other areas we will add on to these, but at the moment, in the start of this certification, the candidate will be tested in these 4 areas. I mentioned proctoring, and we have made agreement with a company called Proctor-Free. They will supervise the candidate when he do the exam. So he can take the exam wherever he are. He only have to have a computer platform and internet available. And the process starts that he has to identify himself, and each of the quiz, he has these 4 quiz I mentioned, these 4 courses, and they have each a time limit, and the candidate will have to stay at this computer. He can't leave the computer during each of the courses, and he have today 75 minutes to answer each of the courses, altogether 50 multiple choice questions and 10 essay questions about these 4 areas I told you about. And here is the certificate we will give to the certified candidates, as you see, and this is only an example. I will come back with more documentation of this later. I told you in the beginning that we wanted to have real people test the system before we were able to show and launch this internationally. And we had 7, and you see their names here. They are all then the charter members of TQC. I will come back to show them a little bit more closely. But just about the certification, it's awarded for a 3-year period, because this is a field which develops fast, and we think it's important that you have a recertification, and that is required at the end of the 3rd year. And then the candidate, if he or she wants to be recertificate, keep up his certification, has to submit a recertification form. And this will be evaluated by the TQC certification board and see that the candidate has been involved in training and education and activity over these 3 years, and will then be easily recertified and get their recertificate certificate. And if he or she has not been so much involved but still wants to keep up the certification, there will be a recertification exam, which will be simpler than the original exam. I like to take a little bit time to mention these candidates, because they have done a great job. They have been involved in this testing. We started the testing in the beginning of 2020. And first of all, what you find here, if you click on these, you will get their brief bios. Let's look at Desiree B. Carey. So you can read who is Desiree. She is from Australia. This good. Is okay. They get each their diploma with the picture on, with when they got the certification, and that each certificate has a number. She's from Australia. We have one candidate, Larry Porter from USA. We have one from Nigeria, Gebenga Morenchi. And we have one from South Africa, Notemba Mlalaba. We have one from Middle East, Nail Momani. He is from Jordan, but he resides in Dubai. We have one more from Australia, Russell Dippy. And we have one from China, Lily. And all this have done a very good job by going through. And the system we started out with has changed according to the feedback they have given us. And we are in the process now to take all that into account. So we are very happy with all the work they have done by doing this. So what about how does this go? What are the practical steps? And I've shown you here the practical steps. First of all, the candidates have to be a TIEMS member, so they have to pay their memberships. Then they have to send the application. When the application approved, the candidate has to pay a certification fee. I will come back to the figures. And then start uploading of documentation. And when the documentation is found compliant, he or she can take the examination, but there is an examination fee to be paid. So the payment happens in 3 steps, and there needs to be less than 6 months from when the candidate starts his application until he has uploaded all the documentation. Then ready for examination, and the candidate has 3 months in order to do his or her examination. If the candidate passes the examination, he will be certified. If he does not pass the examination on the first trial, he will get another trial within the next 3 months. So altogether, the candidate has 12 months to perform the whole process. There is nothing against doing it faster, but we give the candidates up to 12 months to do this in a proper way. So here are the different fees that are involved. These are the membership, and you can see it vary depending if it's a standard member or from a transition economy country or a student member or an institutional member, which gives 5 membership. So if an institution says we will have an institutional membership, they will get the possibility to have 5 candidates go through. And when a candidate has been certified, the candidate will be a professional certified member. And all these are 1-year memberships. The certification fees, the application fee is 125 euro and the examination fee 100 euro. What we do now in the inaugural year 2021, we give 25% discount on above of these fees. But for members coming from transition economy countries, they can apply for a scholarship, which then will cover the whole TQC application fee and 50% of the examination fee. The reason for only covering 50% of the examination fee is that we have to pay proctor fee for their monitoring and taking video of the candidate. So how to start the certification? You become a TIEMS member. You go to the membership site and find the membership. Then review the requirements and the prerequisites as shown on the slide 5 and 8. Log into the platform, TQC application form, and fill out the application form and start the process. And then things goes by itself. We have different files. This brief introduction, also the public documents are this brief introduction. The description document is also on the website. Special newsletter on the website, also sent you yesterday, and the code of conduct and the application form. And that was all I had. So if you have questions, I'm glad to that, and I hope you can upload the questions to, I will stop sharing. Here I'm back.
Okay, thanks. So there are a few questions that I'll get to, Harold. I think you've probably covered most of them, but we'll go ahead and I'll ask them again just for clarification.
Yeah, I see the first. Yeah, I can answer those questions I found in the QA form.
Okay, I'll go ahead and just ask you so that everybody can hear them.
Yeah.
So I'll read them to you. So what is the certification and the accreditation, who actually awards it?
Right. At the long-term goal for TQC is an accredited certification, that we will be an accredited authority. We have been in contact with them, and they recommend us that we use the system and get some experience before we reach out to start the accreditation process. But that is the long-time goal. Okay.
And what is the overall duration of the program? I know you had your slide up there with the timeline. What is the duration of the program? And I guess I would add to that is, how long do you think it takes people to prepare or study for the program or for the test?
Depends on your background. It depends on your experience. We started out with these 7 candidates, And I think they were able to log on and start their process around June, July. And then someone take a longer time they had background enough. The last one, the Chinese one, actually did everything in 2 months. So this is, I think, if you're experienced, it's easy to find your documents, upload them. And since we have 4 specific areas for the examination, it's probably necessary that you study those links with all the information on that. That could be maybe a month's work. So I think this can be from 2 months, 6 months, but we allow you to use a year.
Okay, great. All right, I think the last question here, because I think, Robert, I think we covered your question already. If not, just let us know in the chat. We'll ask the question again. But okay, so I salute your efforts and applaud your initiatives. Could you please explain the difference between your program and that which already exists with the International Association of Emergency Managers? Which I'm assuming they're the AEM, CEM is what they're speaking about.
Well, 2 of the TQC certified, the Australian, Russell Dippy, and Larry Porter, they are both SEM certified, and they will probably be the best one to say something. But we have covered that in the description, where are we different from them? And we have more an international look and feel that we are adding that more than those. So we are covering 2 national certification, SEM, and the Australian IFAC 1, and it's described in the TQC description document.
Okay, interesting, thanks. So to follow up with that, maybe since we have this kind of LinkedIn event group now, can we upload some of the introductory information about the certification into that LinkedIn group to share with everybody? Is that okay?
Yes, we can upload
Great.
all that documents so they can read it, they can look through it. And back
thanks.
to the SEM certified, if candidate is SEM certified, has probably most of the documentation and will go easily through the compliance phase. Examination, the candidate needs to prepare if he does not know specific ISO, INSARAG, and international and the Sendai framework. Probably read a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think it's largely coming down to, okay, so the US and is really focused within that kind of national response framework and those standards and guidelines, whereas with TIEMS it's kind of more again, if you understand the Sendai framework and disaster risk reduction, and then INSARAG as far as those and the international standards. So it's probably covering, I guess I would say, mostly the same information, but it's coming down to the specificities of each of those type of documents that you have to study is one of the big differences. Okay, next question. Let's see. How do you deal with sensitive documents? For example, I'm not allowed to, or some people are not allowed to disclose their documents. So how do you deal with more sensitive documents, for example?
Okay, we haven't thought about that, but I believe what we ask for are documents that are public for each, so I can't see that should be a problem. If you have a diploma or you've done a course, etc., I think those documents are possible to share, and and we are asking for one reference, so that reference could cover things which you didn't want to disclose and tell about and proof of that documentation.
Okay, so are you willing to work with a candidate if they have some documents that they are sensitive about, so that you can somehow verify their?
Yeah, absolutely. And everything, the only thing we disclose is, of course, the certificate and who is certified, and their diploma. The rest is saved in the platform.
Okay. And next question is, would it be possible for any European university to also partner with TIEMS and award a joint certified diploma?
Absolutely. This is what we are looking for, because we have some agreements with what we call TIEMS Educational Network with universities in US, in South Africa, in Korea, and in Nigeria at present. We like to extend that to everybody that likes to work with us on this. And we know there are a lot of courses at universities, and giving those to the candidates and cooperate with us would be very welcome.
Okay, great. Along with the Sendai framework, I think this is the last question. So along with the Sendai framework, would it be possible to also cover the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, the Paris Agreement on Climate Change, and the New Urban Agenda, also as these frameworks also have a 2015 to 2030 timeframe? So I guess the larger question is how much can you incorporate, right?
Oh, and you're right. We have, when we started this, and we saw the field is so big that and emergency management is about everything. So we just narrowed it down to 4 things. But since we started, the pandemic took all over, and we didn't cover much of pandemic in the beginning. So we did see that these different areas and what was mentioned now in the last question absolutely should be covered, because it should be an international perspective. So when people meet, wherever they go, where they ever assist each other, they have a common understanding of these things which are important when you do international emergency management.
Yeah, completely agree. Okay, so thank you everybody for attending this session covering the TQC certification and with TIEMS. Oh, there's one more question that we'll ask really quick. Do you have any collaboration with the UN system, including the WHO and emergency medical teams?
No, not any specific. We had some cooperation with the World Bank, because they did look into civil protection around the world, partly what we are doing now. And we did provide information to them, but unfortunately, the World Bank decided not to expose that study for different reasons. So the work we do here in some way take over that and give an exposure, because this is important information. But we are gladly to cooperate with all of them, and especially UN and WHO with the pandemic. It's good to get that in.
You have mentioned in the past, though, and I don't want to take this on for too long, but you have mentioned in the past that TIEMS is doing research projects with the European Union. Is that correct?
That's also correct. We do different, at the moment, we are involved in one project called Impetus. And Impetus is about smart city. We look at technology, but also ethics, because when you monitor people in a smart city environment, you also have to be very aware of the ethical sides of that. This project is 2 years, and it started 1st of September in 2020, where our role is actually communication and dissemination of the results.
Okay, interesting. And another one. So the questions keep coming in, which is very good, which it's better to have questions than no questions. But would it be possible to also look at the Common Alert Protocol as a unified global system for early warning and alert messaging?
Yeah, the only thing I can say, absolutely yes, because what we are striving at is actually finding a common ground that everybody should use. Or when we started out, roll back a little bit. When we started out, we thought standardization was a good idea. We talked with some with standardization, and we got the recommendation, oh, if you use the word standardization, you will have reaction from everywhere, and everybody will say you will never reach an agreement or consensus on any standardization. So we pull back a little bit. So what we call it, as you said as you saw in my presentation, we call it a common international understanding of emergency and disaster management. That the goal should be, of course, that we should be more using similar systems and learn from each other. So this about the Common Alert Protocol, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay, so we are going just to about close to an hour now. So I just want to say thank you for everybody attending. If you do have any questions, you can certainly reach out to Harold, reach out to myself. If you have any questions or want to see any future webinars on any different topics, certainly just let us know. And of course, as always, like I said, if you can join us in the LinkedIn group, that's absolutely great. You can ask more questions there. We will upload some additional information about the certification process and the overview and information. And of course, as we go through this webinar series, we will even upload more reference websites and other information so that you can, see what we're talking about as we have this more kind of global discussion about emergency and crisis management. So again, once again, thank you very much. Really great to see everybody and have everybody here. And I think we had maybe a little bit less, maybe about 10 or 15 nations here, but it was certainly good to have everybody here during the webinar itself. So thanks again, Harold. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you all. It was a pleasure.
And thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Same. Bye.